Literate Discussions with M. David Hornbuckle.
Welcome back to Literate Discussions. I am M. David Hornbuckle. Today my guest is Ashley M. Jones. She is an award-winning poet for her collections Magic City Gospel and Dark Thing, and she also teaches at the Alabama School of Fine Arts. Welcome, Ashley.
Hey,
Hey.
what's up?
Okay, so we're going to talk today about Lucille Clifton, and I know that Lucille Clifton is a big influence on your own poetry because I've heard you talk about this at poetry readings before. So can you just talk about that for a minute or so?
Yeah, so Lucille Clifton is the end all be all for poetry for me. She's my most favorite poet. I look up to her immensely, and I'm using present tense. I know that she has passed on, but I feel like she's still here with me through her poetry, the idea of someone's spirit still existing through their art. The reason that I love her so much is because when I first read her work, I felt like for the first time, I was being let in to poetry in a way that I never had before. Because her work is so accessible, and because she's able to say so much in such plain and small words, like somehow that was a corner being turned for me. Like I felt like I was being mirrored in the work in a way that I didn't always feel reading other work. And of course, being raised in America and, having taken regular English classes, my exposure to Black writers was not that much, up until honestly college. And even then, there was a lot of self-study I had to do. And so when I found her in maybe my first or second year of college, maybe later than that, but when I found her in college, I was really thirsty for somebody who was Black and who was a woman and who was letting go of all the pretense of poetry.
What about some specific poems that I think I sent you the list of poems that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going over with my class, right? So the first one in my book is Miss Rosie.
I encountered this poem a super long time ago, and I hadn't seen it in a while, so it was fun to look at it for this. I think the thing about this poem that strikes me, and it's kind of true of all of her poems, is that the image is so, I guess, normal. And what I mean by that is everyone in the world, for the most part, knows somebody like this character, Miss Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
Either it's someone that you see as you drive past, downtown or something, and you see someone who has, set up shop on a street corner, or someone who has grown old. And I think, let me see if I can find the exact phrase she says. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
waiting for your mind, like next week's grocery. Most of us know someone who is similarly waiting for their mind, even if you don't have the experience of knowing someone who's quote unquote down in their luck. But something that she does so well is present this very well known image, but she's making it new somehow, making it positive. Like a lot of her
Well,
poems,
yeah.
like inspirational part of it, and I hesitate to use that word because that makes it feel really like after school specially,
Right.
like not what I mean. But in that last part,
Mm-hmm.
I stand up through your destruction, I stand up. I feel like she does this a lot in her poetry where she'll give you something that's really heartbreaking and then turn it into, oh, no, this is actually powerful. This is not for you to
Mm-hmm.
feel bad. Like, I'm actually empowering you through this. And so that's what I think of when I think of Miss Rosie.
Yeah, I agree that's there's often a turn at the end of her poems where there's this kind of validation or affirmation. What about the Lost Baby poem?
This is another one that's doing that similar work. I mean, it's a different topic, doing that turn. She's kind of like the queen of a volta, even though none of these are sonnets. I think we can use volta for anything these days. But yeah, this poem, which is talking about a baby who is lost, of course, I love that it ends on this promise of motherhood. Like she's going to fulfill the promise of motherhood in honor of this baby who was lost. And it's kind of like a different take on losing a baby. It kind of reminds me of, oh gosh, what is The Mother by Gwendolyn Brooks, which is about
Mm-hmm.
abortion. And this poem isn't necessarily about that. Like, I think it was a miscarriage maybe, but there's a similar move there to take that whole idea of having lost a child and moving it from like a place of pity, sadness, or shame and into like, but this is the power of that. You did not get born, but you're still a part of me, you're still impactful. You still made a difference in my life and in the lives of your siblings, and I just love that she's able to take it there, because we so often just stop at the sadness and the shame when there's so much more to learn from these kind of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Homage to My Hips is one of your favorites because I know you brought that poem in when you did workshops with my students before. So what attracts you to this poem?
Yeah, I was just talking about this poem with some students last week, actually, and we talked about how, again, she's able to take things that people just want to throw away, like even something as seemingly small as having big hips. Like anyone could say, okay, whatever, you got big hips, who cares? But she's like, no, no, no. I'm challenging the beauty standards. I'm telling the world, yeah, my hips are big. I'm not getting smaller. The world just has to get bigger for me. And that's like so powerful.
Yeah.
It really like reminds me and so many other people, you don't have to feel like whatever is a problem is actually a problem with you. Like if you have, like she says, big hips, look at the power that they have. They can spin a man like a top, exclamation point. you know?
Yeah, and I love that this poem actually ends with an exclamation point. You don't see exclamation points in poems very often.
For those who don't know, I went to art school, so I've been studying writing since the tender age of 12. So we were always taught, do not use exclamation points because you're not going to use them right. You're going to like overuse them and it's going to become too dramatic and, just wild. Like it's like a bullet or something you have to keep tabs on, which is maybe a poor analogy considering the times, but it's fine. So yeah, to see that exclamation point, she and Gwendolyn Brooks actually do the exclamation point super well, I think, and punctuation in general. But I love that at the end of Homage to My Hips, because if the rest of the words weren't enough to tell you that she's like all about her hips, the exclamation point is like, bam, there it is.
What about Wild Blessings?
So I had never seen this poem until you showed it to me. I guess little known Ashley fact, people assume that because she's my favorite poet, I've read every single poem that she's ever written, which
There are
I
lots of
have.
poems.
There's two, I mean, I haven't lived long enough to have read all her poems, but I'm also intentionally not reading them all because I want them to last for my whole lifetime. I want them to be new, each year of my life. And hopefully I live long enough that I can, read them all. But I know I keep saying the same thing, but this poem too just takes something really like painful. There's so much pain described. The man who emptied into his daughter, which
Ugh,
just pausing
yeah.
there, like who would even think to describe that? I mean, I'm assuming that the man who emptied himself is like abusing his daughter.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Right. But that's just like an amazing way to say that. Like it's somehow beautiful, even though it's horrible. Like what kind of, alien is she to be able to come up with this stuff? It's incredible. But all of that pain, the trembling, junky hand of a priest, which is really interesting. The junky hand of a priest. There's like so many little moments.
It's very specific, yeah. It's not. This is not like some generic character
No.
that she's invoking.
Right. There's
It
a
sounds like she might actually
specific
known somebody like this. Yeah.
exactly. And again, I keep diverting, but that's another thing I love so much about her work. Like there's so many little moments, even if you don't get them your first, second, third, 50th read through, I mean, you're still getting something important, but you can go back and find more in this small amount of words. It's a short poem. But anyway, back to my first point. I just went on all these diversions, all of those painful images, and we still end on something not exactly powerful, but just different than I would have expected, I guess. I'm grateful for many blessings, but the gift of understanding, the wild one, maybe not. I guess when I think of having understanding, that's like usually a good thing, but
Right.
he's showing us like, okay, the gift of understanding is a blessing, but it's also kind of a curse to be able to understand all those things that she just described or to have some sort of like specific relation to them. I don't know. It's just, but to still call it a blessing, like that complicates the word blessing in a way that is not normal.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, this is maybe a good thing in the grand scheme to be able to reach all these people and, I don't know, provide comfort for them in some way. Because even how the poem starts, a woman licked her hand and she's kind of trying to be like, that's also kind of good, but Well, that
But
kind of makes me think that she's probably somebody who people confide in strange ways.
right. Well, I think that that's the complicated blessing that she's come talking about in the end, right? It's like you're the person that is attractive to like all the freaks, I guess,
Mhm.
or all the detritus of society.
Yeah, I hope that I never have to experience the licking blessing. Love to stay away from that one.
Yeah. All right. On to more fun things. Wishes for Sons. This has
Oh
always
my
been a
gosh,
favorite of mine. Oh my
this for
God.
sons.
Yeah.
Yeah, classic, one of the greatest hits of Lucille Clifton.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody, at least that I know, has had to read this poem, for
Mm,
various. But people love this one for the obvious reasons, like all of us who menstruate do wish that those who don't menstruate would understand
mm,
the frustration of it, and that it is super dismissive to say things like, "Oh, well, you're on your period, that's why you're so cranky." It's like, well, yes, literally, I'm bleeding. Like, of course, I'm cranky. Some weak woman thing, you'd be upset too if there was just stuff coming out of you, you know.
right.
Um, but it's like more than that, of course. It's not just wish you would bleed. It's like I wish you would be able to empathize enough to understand that the like patriarchy is bad. Like I wish you could
Hmm.
understand how deeply the patriarchy runs, because it ends with what is it exactly? Then bring them to gynecologists not unlike themselves. Like to understand, okay, yes, the things that we are struggling with are the obvious, discomfort, bloating, moodiness, not being able to find tampons when we need them, ruining our white dresses. But it's also people treating us like we are overreacting, not just to our periods, but in general, that we are too emotional, that we are burdensome in some way. But she's using this like kind of almost not jovial, but what is the word I'm looking for? It's almost playful, her tone.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
when it comes down to that end, it's like, but actually, here's what I'm actually trying to let you know. It's not just the blood, it's this whole system that y'all are creating and participating in that create this really horrible reality for women.
So, to wrap things up, did you have a poem of your own that you wanted to read that is inspired by Lucille Clifton?
Sure. Yeah. So I have here a poem that was written after a Clifton poem. It's in the Golden Shovel format. Should I explain what that is? Or
Yeah, why don't you give a brief explanation of that?
sure.
Because they're
So
gonna they're gonna read that poem, that Gwendolyn Brooks poem that the Golden Shovel comes from. Yeah.
so a golden shovel is a form that was invented by Terrence Hayes using "We Real Cool" by Gwendolyn Brooks, and in his poem "The Golden Shovel," he uses that poem inside of his own. So if you read to the right margin and read all the way down, you'll see the entirety of "We Real Cool." So the form itself, you can take any poem and do that thing. So I did that thing with the poem Black Women by Lucille Clifton. And this poem that I wrote using her poem is called I Cannot Talk About the South Without Talking About Black Women. My grandmothers made America, made the fibers that made us warm, made us invincible, heroines. To tell you who they are, I must start with who they are not. Servants, kitchen-bound mammies, silently obedient wives. We can't, in our modern comforts, imagine the survival they learned was theirs to claim. Can't hold the light they burned through this colonial darkness. What tricks this nation, this American South pulled, minute by minute, to keep my grandmothers convinced. The body you're in is not enough. Your race and your gender work together to mark you less, to mark you takeable. But what they didn't know was that my grandmothers still had an unmovable strength, enough to build a bridge from here to heaven. I know when I leave this broken earth, I'll find them there, sweetening every hour. My grandmothers raised a generation of American men. There is no other way to say this. Look at any Southern family and you'll find somewhere, in a past most will not claim, a Black woman. These men who call themselves bootstrapping and self-made, somewhere there's a Black woman and her unthanked hands who lifted them to where they are now. My father tells a story of the sons of his grandmother's employers, how they, instead of the pension she was promised, decided to give her a damned old tire, an old suitcase, dusty in the yard. What thanks is this for the years she raised that family, for the care they cannot forget. My father could never forgive those men, their Southern tradition, their American tradition. Even now, they tell us Black women are going to save this whole nation with votes or magic or our style taken and renamed. But this is no longer the land of masses and mammies, and we are only superheroines for our own daughters and sons. My grandmothers did not give their lives for me to keep nursing this country, to keep shucking and jiving in a bizarro American dream. My grandmothers are worth more than this corrupt remembering. Now there is no room for the Dixieland lie. We no longer hold these truths you made us accept. Under God, yes. We hear him singing a song of powerful love despite the united hate of America. Grandmothers, women made of salt and spirit, you are faith continuous. Continue us. Raise us to be heroes and heroines, to tell this country that we are not mules, not beasts. You, an army of workers and wives, we hid our fears and woes in your indestructible, ever-present ladiness. The blood you passed down to us is all we will ever need to save our lives.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for Zooming with me today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll see you soon.
Literate Discussions with M. David Hornbuckle.